What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Anime Fiction. I am back with another episode of What If Naruto Teleported to Another World Part 5. And if you did enjoy this video, please like for the next part. And if you're new to my channel and like my content, hit the notification bell for more crossover fiction. And now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 7 L15 January X 777. Port of Harjen. The sun rose over the port city as everyone began to go about their day's work. All the civilians went through the market to buy imported fruit and fish. The children ran after each other, and some men threw cards at every building they came across. A middle-aged man with black and white hair came out of his shop. He raised his hand to block the sunlight from hitting his right eyes. The old man grunted and yawned as he bent down to pick up the newspaper. He went back to his shop and his warehouse. He sat near the counter of the shop and opened the newspaper. You scoured the first articles to find something of interest, and then I noticed what was written on the first page. Heartfelt concern takes down Big Bunce. As we all know, Heartfelt, a big corporate power, has been harassing Bunce organization for its business in all countries for a long time, wishing to merge businesses and expand the railways and increase their reach. But the Bunce group resisted, wanting to outrun their competitors in this field. But today, Heartfelt concern has bought Bunce Corporation and taken control of the entire eastern half of the rails in Fury, ensuring that concern expands and grows to become even more profitable than it already was. But in the wake of this purchase, the Bunce Corporation filed for bankruptcy. One of the oldest and richest families in Fury is now destitute. What the Bunces are most famous for is collecting artifacts over the centuries. His most famous purchase was the 500 million auction. Peeved. More fat cats have to live with us in the sewers. It's nothing new. I swear, all these rich kids will be joining us in the bowels of society pretty soon. She spoke loudly so that his assistant in the back could hear him as he lifted boxes. The old man waited for an answer but received none. He looked at the newspaper again, hoping to find something good. HMPH, maybe there's something about sports or pranks. He kept leafing through the paper trying to find something of interest. He got to the center of the paper and found the magic ad. He frowned at the bad news he was reading. The articles of the last few weeks have all been about the same horrible rumor that was circulating in Fury. That various dark corporations were starting to team up and work together. They had started taking over the weaker guilds and were forming something of a team with each other. The man knew what that meant. That there was a dark cloud announcing the state of peace in which Fury was, causing a wave of fear and anguish among most of Fiore's mages and civilians. Then he looked at the next item, which was written in a smaller box but was obviously just as important as the previous note. Damn on sight. Fear strikes the hearts of peaceful people. As most citizens of Fury know, the dark guilds are rumored to be joining forces. Whether this is true or just an idea spread by a prankster, we can't be sure. But we know that a real threat has reared its ugly head in our eyes. Condemnation. For those who don't know what damnation is, they must have been living under a rock for too long. Damnation is infamous across the country and beyond as one of the oldest, largest, and most feared independent corporations in history. They have gathered many followers and trained themselves to make each of their members stronger than most wizards, and they have been watched and persecuted by many guilds and wizards for several decades. But no one succeeded or turned back. Given the announcement of this rumor, they took action. Several small groups traveled across the country in search of these corporations. To wait and strengthen your belief. Who will protect this country? In every possible way. If you see members wearing this badge, please contact the nearest Reunited faction or Council of Magic Healing Facility. The man looked under the emergency notice at the emblem of the independent terrorist faction. An image of a clenched fist inside a blazing fire. Which means they would do anything for their cause, even if they burn in the flames of hell.
Man, it's scary to think that there are people like that. That they can just kill and do whatever they want because they think it's right. Hey kid, make sure you stay away from those kids, okay? The man barely turned to address his young protege who still wasn't paying attention to him. He was just picking up big boxes that would crush most kids in his measure. The man growled in anger as he continued to be ignored. He gritted his teeth as a large tick grew on his head. You know, I try to be nice and help him. Give him food, clothes and a place to sleep until it's time to go. So you'd think. He put his hands down and crushed the paper as he spun and yelled. When I talk to the grateful little bastard, he answer me.
The mustachioed boy abruptly dropped the box and matched the man's gaze with his. Well, why the hell am I doing the owner's job?
Because I'm on a break, Gaki. I need a break to distress.
You're back? You're not that old, you lazy bastard. You're pushing all the work on me so you can sit on your fat ass all day and read the boring paper. Naruto stuck out his tongue and blew a raspberry at the old man. You're so stupid, OG-san. He continued to taunt him until the man appeared in front of him and held his head firmly between his knuckles. What was that little shit? She rubbed her knuckles on the blonde boy's temples as he tried to protest for him to stop. Looks like you just called kinda lazy old fool. But you didn't mean that, did you? Naruto sent some of his newfound magic into his fists as he tried to punch the man in front of him. But no matter how hard he tried, the man's superior height had him cornered. Uh-oh, I'll have to try harder, Gaki. The gray-haired man laughed as he increased the speed of his nugget. Naruto began to resent the futility of defending him. So he grabbed the arms of the man who was playing with him and kicked him in the groin with his leg. Parker stopped laughing as he felt shock overwhelm him. His eyes almost rolled back as he let go of the boy and dropped to his knees, holding his balls. Damn, I don't even know why I'm helping you with this shit. The boy groaned as he took the box and placed it with the others. Parker fell beside him as he watched the young man. Well, because I picked you up when you arrived at the port last week. And I'll let you, oh, God, stay until the train leaves tonight. Parker took a deep breath as he began to regain feeling in his testicles. Damn, this guy can kick hard. The free service and get to work, hoodlum. Oh my God, my balls. Why couldn't I leave when I arrived? The man sighed as he gripped the bridge of his nose in annoyance. For the 100th time, the trains didn't move last week. The company checks between railroad checks were too busy arguing to make any trips. But today they're moving again, so you can leave later. He went to the counter and opened the paper again, and get out of my life. Naruto matched his complaint as he continued to prepare the boxes to ship on the ships to the port. He couldn't believe he actually had to help that grumpy old man with all that work. When he finally arrived on land last week, he was starving and dehydrated. After a night of eating and drinking as much as he could, Naruto finally told all the men in the port that he wanted to join a special guild. They told him the trains didn't leave until next week, so he had to stay put until then. All the sailors around him didn't want to welcome him at that moment, so Naruto didn't know what to do. But then the gray-haired Parker stepped out of the crowd and said he needed an extra pair of hands. He had told the former slave that he could stay with him for a week, but that he would have to work to pay the interest. Naruto wasn't thrilled with the idea, but hey, whatever got him through the week. Naruto had to admit that aside from the attitude the man was displaying, he wasn't that bad. He had far better food than he had rationed in the tower. They gave him new clothes to wear as the old ones were ruined, but he kept the boots. And sleeping in a bed was far better than the alternatives he had. Also, with all the heavy lifting, he's had plenty of opportunities to test his armor and chakra limit. Also, it was fun to have an older figure take care of him as if he were a real child. Not as a slave or a weapon. Almost like a guardian or parent. As Naruto started to finish all the lifts, he noticed that the sun had started to set. He had done all the work for several hours and it was time to receive his reward. Walked back to house and walked in to see Parker playing with something. She walked over to the counter and looked at the man. What are you doing, OG-san? The man picked up the sack he was preparing and placed it on the counter. I am preparing for your journey, Gaki. It's not enough that you have stamina, if you don't eat you'll pass out like you did before. He grabbed the edges of the food-filled cloth and wrapped it up. That should be enough until you get here, at a train station. The boy started shaking in place with barely contained joy. So this train will take me to Fairy Tale? He watched the temporary brace as the man brought his fist down to the boy's head and held it there. No idiot, I already told you I don't know. He clenched his fist as the boy started flailing his arms angrily. The train leaving tonight is a freight train. It carries cargo and supplies only, so it has no passenger cars or schedules to check. So the train could go to Magnolia or it could go to 7. Trains will not resume their normal journey for at least 2 weeks. She looked at the boy with a questioning look. Are you sure you don't want to wait until then? The boy shook his head as he looked at Parker sternly. No way. I'm tired of being stuck in one place. If this train doesn't take me to Fairy Tale, I'll walk from where it stops. He snorted triumphantly as the old man could only partially sigh and laugh. Okay. Can't challenge you, huh? So do you have everything? Yes. Swords? Naruto picked up 2 wrapped papers lying in the corner. Check. Book? Naruto pulled out a diary he kept in his pocket. Check. Okay. One last thing. Parker prepped the boy as he walked to the back of his shop. Naruto looked confused as the man returned wearing a long black cloak. He bent down and wrapped it around the dazed boy's neck. Here. This will keep you warm and keep you hidden in the dark. Remember, if they catch you, they'll drop you. Naruto looked at his new cape and played with it as he started to laugh. Thanks OG-san, that looks great. The old man laughed at Naruto's childish behavior. He could tell the boy hadn't gotten many presents if he was so happy with some clothes. Which would explain why the normally serious boy acted so young around him. This was probably the first kind of experience he had with someone who treated him like a child. Naruto and Parker exited the shop and looked towards the smoke from the train. Parker moved and looked at the young man. So are you ready? Naruto grinned like crazy and raised his fists. Hell yeah. Parker laughed as he put his hand on the boy's head and stroked it. Well, hope to hear great things about you soon. Becoming a famous magician would be great for my business. Yes. And when I come back, I'll show you how much I've grown. Ah, that's fine. Because when you get back, I hope you've used up the rest of your account. What? What do you mean? It doesn't matter. Just go, boy. She patted the boy on the back and sent him away. Naruto chuckled as he started running towards the departing train. When he got up the road, he turned and covered his mouth with his hands. Thank you, OG-san. Take care. He nodded to the distant man as all Parker could do was shake his head and wave back from him. Naruto ran off when he heard the train start to whistle. He arrived at the station and hid behind some boxes and barrels. He looked over the wooden bridges to see some foremen chatting and packing the boxcars. When they finished talking, Naruto took the opportunity to run into the shadows and jump into the empty spaces. Naruto crouched in the narrow opening of the packed boxes perfectly still. The men continued to load the train as it waited for it to depart. After some heavy breathing, the engine began exploding and the wheels started moving. Naruto had to keep from jumping for joy to finally be on his way. As the train began to accelerate, Naruto opened the door in shock and watched the ground go by. The pressure of the wind hit him as he felt a cold wind spreading. But after a moment, he looked out and was amazed at what he saw. He saw fields and rivers glittering in the luminescence of the moon and stars. Mountains and trees could be seen so far on the horizon. Naruto could only smile in amazement at the beautiful scenery. He has the first unlimited glimpse of this new world. Naruto kept watching the ground speed go by because it could have been hours and he wouldn't have cared. XXX Erza made her way to Fairy Hill as she yawned from the entire day's work. She had begun to participate regularly in missions, doing at least one a day. She'd started out with simple tasks, like helping merchants and promoting shops around Magnolia. But now he was beginning to embark on a new mission that went beyond the city limits. She had felt a strange sense of accomplishment every time he saw someone thank him for his help. He almost felt guilty for accepting the reward after finishing his work. When Erza arrived at the specialized fairy dormitory, she saw someone standing in front of the doors. A little girl with blue hair of different sizes stood nervously at the door. She was wearing a yellow and orange dress with a brown skirt. Erza advanced until she was a few feet closer to the girl. Levy?
The blue-haired girl looked back at her voice behind her. The older girl behind her wore her normal armor, with her hair pulled back in a little ponytail and looking at her with those blue and brown eyes. She had been feeling very nervous when she joined the guild last week and she could sense a strong air around the Scarlet Girl. And Erza-san.
What are you doing here? The little new sorceress started playing with the hem of her skirt because she couldn't express herself right away. Why, I was going to join everyone in the dorms, but I'm too nervous. Erza looked at Levy with a sympathetic look. She could empathize with Solid Scriptmage's nervous feeling. She felt the same way when she finally got to the dorm a few weeks ago. She softened her face and gave the shorter girl a smile. I understand. It's uncomfortable and excruciating to come to a new place like this. Levy nodded as he fiddled with the handle of her luggage beside him. I didn't think I'd ever be able to sleep in a new place like this. But you know, Erza put her hand on Levy's shoulder and caught the girl's eye. You'll never know if you don't try. And I'll be here with you to take the first step. Levy smiled faintly as a small tear formed in her left eye. The older girl was trying to help her integrate more easily into the guild. She and Kana had already started playing with her and Levy was laughing a lot seeing Elsa punish Gray every time she walked past them. It helped her think about the pain of losing her parents and the memories of those awful men. As Erza led Levy through the doors into the bedroom, her jaw dropped at the beautiful rooms. The furniture and woodwork made the whole lobby look like a jewel. But before Levy could adjust to the sight, he heard footsteps from the kitchen door. A wrinkled old woman in a purple dress came out and looked at the two girls. Well, where the hell have you been, miss? She came out with a ladle in her hand and aimed it at the armored girl. You were supposed to come back here an hour ago. Erza's sweat dropped as she recoiled from the little woman's seemingly angry face. Oh Oba-chan, I was returning from a mission that was taking longer than I thought. It wasn't my fault that. No chutzpah. I'm going to cut back on your portions today. Erza's eyes widened as she began flailing her arms wildly in protest of the older woman's decision. Levy simply continued to watch as the short woman played with the normally stolid girl in the armor. And who are you? Levy stopped laughing and stood at attention. I'm Levy McGraden, ma'am. I'll be living here from now on, if that's okay with you. Great, another mouth to feed. As if that wasn't bad enough already. Hilda sighed as she scratched her head. Well, I guess I'll have to give you half of Erza's food. Erza looked at the dorm mother in shock as she continued to lower the amount of food to the eat chart. But I don't have any beds, so you'll have to live out in the trees with the birds. Levy looked at the aproned woman with big round eyes because she had no words to express. Sure. I could use that other room, but I like to keep my junk in it. Well, I guess I could give you some space today. Levy sighed with relief as he looked at Erza. The two looked at each other and chuckled at the strange circumstances they'd gotten themselves into. Well, if you two are staying there, I guess there will be more food for me. Levy and Erza leapt to their feet and ran towards the kitchen, voicing their reasons for eating. Viola train station. Oh god, my back is starting to kill me. A man with a bandana around his hair complained to his fellow foreman. The other man dropped the other side of the box they were carrying and took off his cap. Well, what are you waiting for? When you take a job where all you have to do is lift heavy objects, your back will start to take a toll. He flicked his cap in front of his face to cool off. He put it back on as he readied the next car to remove the load. Come on, help me with this, will you? The man in the bandana groaned as he straightened up and reached for the handle of the car. The two men grabbed the handle and yanked, causing the wooden door to slide away. They prepared to pull out the boxes but stopped at what they saw. A blond boy with a mustache was leaning against a box, eating a sandwich and reading an old book. He continued to chew the bread until he felt something watch him. He looked up and his heterochromic eyes met the black eyes of the two men. She tossed the rest of the bread into her mouth as she stood up and dusted herself off. He took the cloak he was sitting on and wrapped it around his neck. Then he tucked the book into the back of his pants, took 2 large envelopes, and tied them behind his back. Thanks guys. I've been here for 2 days. I didn't even know he had arrived yet. He leapt from the top deck of the car and casually passed the 2 stunned men. The mustachioed boy continued to walk through the station and into the city as if nothing had happened. The man in the cap looked at his friend. Should we tell anyone? No, too much hassle. Just pretend it didn't happen. But when they find out that a child has just entered the hold and we let him go, we will be fired. You mean, if they find out? The man in the cap cupped his chin as he nodded. Yes, if it's okay. Naruto walked the streets of the beautiful city. The buildings and grandstands could be seen as far as the eye could see. As she passed, she turned away from some small children who were playing tag. The new wizard walked through the city and laughed softly at what he saw. It was great. I had never seen so many people together just living their lives. Even in Harjen, most of the time he stayed in the shop. Parker kept him busy with all the work. Naruto walked over to a fruit stand and looked at the bearded man who owned the place. Hello little boy. How are you this beautiful night? Are you hungry? Naruto thrust his stomach as grunts came out. A bit. Well, lucky for you, I have the best fruit in all of Fury right in front of you. I have apples that have been carefully picked from the healthiest trees. Bananas and oranges that make everything else look like garbage. Here, try it. The man handed Naruto an apple as the boy inspected the red fruit. He brought it to his mouth and took a big bite. His eyes widened at the wonderful taste in his mouth. Wow, that's great. Thank you, sir. The bearded man chuckled throatily as the boy devoured the red apple. No problem, kid. The first one is always free, but the next ones will cost you. But how about this, I'll give you a whole sack of apples for just 300 jewels. What do you say? What are jewels? The boy asked as he finished his apple. He looked at the core and tossed it aside as he lifted his palm to take another. The man stared at the stone-faced boy. Get out of here, boy. You're a bad deal. Naruto cocked his head and walked away, letting the bearded man shake his head in disappointment. He continued walking the streets, observing strange 4-wheeled carts whizzing by and people walking around in impressive clothes. She looked past the houses and saw a mountain range not far away. He approached a woman wearing fur coats and tugged at her skirt. Oh, sorry. Do you know where I can find Fairy Tail? The woman looked down and saw a boy dressed in black with strange eyes. Naturally, for any upper-class member of society, she reacted as expected. 2. Yes, yes. Help. I've been mugged by this pimp. She screamed as other people started talking and gathered around her. Naruto panicked throughout the screaming, crowded space and ran down the clearest path he could find. He kept running until he no longer heard the shrill voice of that old woman piercing his ears. He breathed in relief as his heart stopped beating. Naruto looked around. All he could see were people and shops and streets. During his inspection, he noticed a woman leaving a box of sugar outside her shop. He swallowed hard as he walked towards her, thinking he would be as good as her other encounters with her people. She pulled up her long skirt and caught his eye. Excuse me. The brown-haired teenager felt a tug on her skirt as she looked at the shorter boy. He had blonde hair and strange scars on his face, as well as 2 different colored eyes. He wore a black cloak and had 2 bandages on his back. This boy, she thought she looked very strange as she bent her knees to look directly at him. Yes? Do you know where I can find the fairy tale guild? I try to ask people but they interrupt me or scold me. He complained of annoyance at how people he knew treated him. The girl cocked her head, confused by what the strange boy had said. Honey, fairy tale isn't here. It's in Magnolia. This is Viola. The woman saw the boy stare at her blankly as she shook her head. Magnolia is too far away. A week by carriage and a few days by train.
Naruto deflated when he realized what he had said. The train hadn't stopped in Magnolia and had missed where it wanted to go. Naruto grabbed his head as he moaned in annoyance. He continued stomping until he exhaled and dropped his hands to his sides. Ne-chan, can you tell me which way is it? I'll go there myself.
The girl gasped as she looked at the boy in shock. That. You can't go alone, it's too dangerous. There are monsters and thieves who might kill you. And the dark corporations and reports of damnation have sent people into revolt. You would never do that. Naruto shrugged at his warning as he looked around. Okay, Ne-chan, I can take care of myself. See you. As Naruto started walking, he felt a pair of arms wrap around his chest and pull him into a developing chest. He began to wriggle out of her grip and she felt the air begin to thin. Oh no, you won't. You have to listen to this, Oni-chan, and stay where you are. He began flailing his arms wildly as he tried to escape her grip. She felt a muffle vibrate in her chest and pulled it out. That. He took a deep breath and looked at her with a slight tinge of pink covering his face. I said I don't care. I want to join Fairy Tail. He nearly wrenched himself free from her arms before she leapt out into the street, taking him with her. He increased his grip and pushed Naruto further in.
No way. I won't let the death of an impatient child stick to my soul. You stay here. She continued to wrestle with the boy as people on the street looked at him with a variety of interests.
Ah. That sister loves his brother so much that she doesn't want to let him go. How sweet. My God, kids these days don't even have the decency to be in a private place anymore. Why don't you do stuff like that with me? For the last time, I'm tired when I get home. I like this. Also, if you really want to join a guild, we have one on the pass. Blue Pegasus is one of the most popular guilds in all of Fury. I'm sure Master Bob would give you a place so you don't have to kill yourself. He felt the boy struggle even harder as his grip began to slip. For the last time, I just want to join. Naruto stopped fighting as he leaned back into her chest and looked at her. Wait, did you say Pegasus? Hey. Yes, why? And Master Bob? Yes, he is the guildmaster of that place. Why are you interested in him? Naruto didn't answer him because he only remembered the stories his old grandfather told him so much, and about his friend Bobby and the horse farm he founded. Can you show me the way? The building was large, larger than any he had ever seen. It was made up of pink bricks that covered the entire building. It had 2 large towers and stained glass framing the windows. On the sides of the building were intricate wings that looked like those of a bird. And above the door was a banner with a pink horse covered by 2 floral decorations. Naruto felt a wave of nervous tension wash over him as he climbed the beautifully designed steps. He reached the door and took a deep breath. Okay, nothing goes here. He grabbed the doorknobs and pushed forward. A bright light flooded her vision as she squinted and tried to see past it. As the light went out, Naruto saw what he could only describe as a huge ball of wealthy people. Several men and women were dressed in the most luxurious and amazing clothes he has ever seen.
The room has been toned down a bit to give the whole place a classy feel. Each adult kept a glass of the best imported wines and beverages. They were talking about important events and parties they had recently attended. Naruto felt a sense of wonder hit him at what he was seeing. Then he heard it was pretty obvious he wasn't a member. By the way he was dressed in hand-me-down trousers and shirts while the men wore suits and tuxedos. He walked through most of the crowd as everyone was talking and laughing. He noticed a wooden platform with stools in front of her. Behind the bar were hundreds of wonderful wines and glasses. And looking away from him was a round man with a bald head. Naruto couldn't see her features from any angle he could. So he hopped onto the leather stool and sat at the bar, waiting with bated breath. Naruto took several deep breaths as he prepared his question. Sir, can you help me? I'm looking for a Bobby-san. Do you know where I can find him? The bald man heaved a sigh of satisfaction at what the new voice told him. Ah, Bobby, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Why are you asking? Naruto chuckled as he scratched the back of his neck. Well, I remember hearing that name in some old stories and thought he might help me. He reached down and placed it on the counter. So can you tell me where it is? The faceless bartender gave an oddly feminine chuckle at what he had just said. Oh, it shouldn't be too hard. He turned and looked at the boy while the young man had a slightly surprised look. The bartender's eyes were narrowed and lipstick was on his lips.
and his cheeks were a vibrant red with a strange paint. A pair of white wings appeared as they came out of his back. Naruto finally noticed that the man was wearing a strange pink suit that no man like him should ever wear. He also wore a strange necklace of hops around his neck. The transvestite raised his hand to cover his mouth as he gave a small chuckle. "I'm Bobby." Naruto's eyes rolled white as his blood turned to ice and his face turned pale. Bob walked over to the bar as he rested his chin on his hands, staring the newcomer straight in the face, empty and terrified. "And may I ask why such a nice guy would ask about me? And how can I help you, sir?" Naruto shivered violently as sweat poured from all over his body, even the parts he didn't know could sweat. Naruto Uzumaki, ma'am. "Oh, Naruto-chan, that's a very cute name for such a cute boy. And I love that mustache on your face, they are so charming. I've never seen anyone with that." Bob reached down to touch his face, but Naruto staggered backwards and accidentally fell off the stool.
Bob looked across the bar at the boy who was lying on the floor with the stars on his head. "Oh, are you okay?" Naruto looked concerned at the old man but froze when he saw that half of the man's body was sticking out of the counter. The man stepped out as if he had no body and ducked, finding Naruto on the ground. "You were lucky. Not many guys are as tough as you."
Naruto backed away as he tried to get some distance between himself and the man-woman. Beer and wine of some of the more expensive varieties. Men and women who seemed to come from the most famous banquet in the country. And now a half-man in a suit was approaching him as he passed through the walls. Could it get weirder? Sniff. Naruto stopped in his tracks as he felt another force behind him. Something that inhaled her hair as she lay on the ground. Naruto stood up on his hands as he turned away, trying to see what kept him from being safe. What she saw was so horrific and traumatic that it would affect her life for years to come. Men, ah. Erza struck Gray over the head as she saw the boy walking around the guild almost naked. She sighed in disbelief at how this guy could just walk across an open area without realizing he was on his skates. Damn Gray, will you ever learn? No one wants to see you strutting naked. Gray gripped the red, sore bump and looked at the armored girl. Shut up, Erza. If you have a problem, tell me not to rack my brains. I can't take it anymore. What if my brains go to pulp? You mean more than they already were. Gray looked at the table where Kana sipped her juice in silence while Levy laughed at what she had said the fortune teller. Ha ha ha, that's bad, Kana-san. You shouldn't tease Gray-san so much. Levy held on to her sides as a few tears of joy appeared in his eyes. Kana sighed and touched Levy's back to help the girl. Levy, you shouldn't worry about honorifics here. All sense of decency and courtesy disappear faster than Gray's underwear. The ice machine screamed at her choice of an analogy, but Erza hit her again because she wasn't dressed yet. Just call me Kana, okay?
Levy smiled and nodded. The two girls noticed that Erza had sat down again and was continuing to eat her cake. My god, I can never eat in peace with someone like him. She took a big bite of her cake and smiled happily at her wonderful taste. He gulped and looked at his guildmates. Thank goodness there aren't two.
Yes, keep eating, Erza. One day you will eat so much that your armor will immediately fall off. Erza took a cue and started tugging at Gray's cheeks after her know-it-all comment. Everyone who saw laughed as she continued. Ah. Erza stopped torturing her as she dropped Gray and stared into space. The three young wizards looked at the girl with two eyes wondering what she was doing. Kana looked at them all as she tapped Erza's shoulder. Hi Erza, are you okay? The Scarlet Girl returned her gaze with a movement of surprise. She took a few quick breaths as she regained her bearings. Yes, I'm fine. It's just that. That? I felt that something awful had just come into this world. Oh yeah, this is quite an interesting and unique scent. The little man considered as she nodded silently and looked at the new boy. The new kid who was currently clambering out of the wall and trying to run, his eyes pale from the experience of seeing his undoubtedly beautiful face. The aroma that makes me see the wonders and experiences lived by such a young man. Men. The short man with orange hair, a flat shiny nose and high cheekbones walked over to the now slightly calmer boy and held out his hand. What's your name, my young friend? Naruto. Who are you, Osan? He took the hand that had been extended to him and stood up, noting that he was about the same height as the strange troll in front of him.
Bone. I'm not an old man, my boy. I'm only 21. But it's understandable. He moved his hands in a beautiful formation. Lights and stars seemed to appear everywhere his hands moved. Many look up to me as their wise and wonderful senpai. A man who has seen the wonders and beauties of many lands and peoples. He posed with his body facing in a different direction and his hands shining towards the young man.
The man who changed the world in one night. Ichiya Vandale Kotobuki. Men. Naruto remained silent as he could only gape at the absurd man. Soon enough, other guild members got together and figured out why one of their most famous members was making such a fuss. People gathered around and looked at the frightened blonde boy in cape and wraps. One male member expressed his thoughts. Wow, what a weird guy. An older man later told his article about him. His clothes are pretty awful. He must have got them out of the trash. Then a female member approached the boy and yanked his cheek, receiving a few grunts of protest in return. But these little lines on his face make him look like a kitten. And he's so cute, too. He will become very attractive when it grows up. Other female members began to gather and play with the boy who was trying to escape her grasp. Everyone squealed and laughed as they began to tug at her cheeks and look into her beautiful eyes. Soon enough, a pair of heels began clicking against the floor as another member made himself known. What is going on? Some of the other male members looked away from where the blonde boy was being surrounded and looked at the teen who had asked the question. Asked a young woman with light green hair and a red coat as she wondered what all the noise was. Bob approached the teenager. Ah, Karen-chan. I see you're back from your mission. How was it? Pretty much like all the other missions I get. I just had to let them take a few pictures and we were done. He looked over to where most of the women were gathering. What happened here? Oh, you mean what's all this excitement about? Bob let out a girlish chuckle as he looked to where a pair of boots rocked back and forth on the pile. We just found a new toy and the girls want to try it out. That's right. Well, I'll have to see what he's like. He started frisking himself and realized he had lost something. Can someone help me find my purse?
I understand, Karen-san. The green-haired beauty looked up to see a young man about the same age as the aforementioned blonde boy running towards the slightly older woman. The guy in question had messy brown blonde hair and was wearing a black business suit. He ran to her and handed her the bag. Here's Karen-san.
Oh, thank you, Hibiki-kun. She bent down a bit and took his purse from her hands. She cupped his face in her hands and looked into his eyes. You are so nice to me. That's why I love you so much. She kissed his cheek as the boy blushed and fainted a little. Always be my little man, okay? Yes, madam. The boy waved while the woman laughed playfully. Bob just chuckled at the young man's enthusiasm for his jokes. And a few feet away, another young woman was sitting at a table with another guy, watching what was going on with a good frown. It's not fair. Why does she get everything just because she's pretty? Keep teasing Hibiki-kun like he's his own personal toy. What do you think? The blonde girl with wavy hair pulled back in a ponytail asked irritably. He got no response in return, so he looked at the light-skinned boy. Ren-kun? Hey. Oh sorry Jenny, I wasn't listening, the black-haired boy said as he looked into the distance. I was thinking about what Inoue told me earlier about making me more attractive. Like I need to have a different attitude or get some tan. She looked at her friend with a questioning brow. Would I look good with a tan? Be careful with those things Ren-kun, I heard they are bad for your skin. Ichiya approached her teacher as the commotion over the mustachioed boy continued. Teacher? How are you, Ichiya-chan? Well, it's about that wonderful new guy's perfume, you will see. Bob looked at his guild member with a questioning look. What is that? Sir, that young man has traces of perfume, similar to his friends from a few weeks ago. Bob's eyebrows shot up in surprise as he kept his eyes closed. It was amazing. Enough. Everyone's attention fell on the panting boy whose clothes had been rumpled and pulled out. He took a deep breath as he looked at the strange sniffing man and the transvestite. What kind of place is this? I try to ask a guy something and it turns out to be a woman. Then some guy sniffs my head and all these girls attack me. What place is this? Ichiya struck another pose as he pointed at the worried boy. My dear boy, this is the pinnacle of beauty. Where the greatest men and women unite to save this nation. We are a beauty equal to the wondrous creature of legends and myths. We are Blue Pegasus. All members came together and struck their individual poses. Our motto, pants are optional.
Naruto just sweated at the madness displayed by this strange guild. He shook his head as all the members laughed and dispersed, forgetting about him and returning to their conversations. There is no way Rob Jichen's friend owns this place. It's just too weird. Bob broke off his musings when he heard what the new mustachioed guy had said and walked over to him.
Did you just say Rob? Like in Robbie-chan? Naruto looked surprised at the strange man. Yes. I met Rob Jichan when we were together and he told me a lot about all his friends, and he said that his friend Bobby created a guild called the Blue Pegasus. Are you really that Bobby? Bob nodded with a sincere smile. You're not like the stories say. Yeah, well, the weather does crazy things to all of us. He let out a soft laugh as he focused once more on the boy. When was the last time you saw him? Naruto looked down in shame and pain as he was forced to recall that horrible memory. I left him wounded on a boat to leave the island. I thought I'd be safe, but he clenched his fists in remorse. Bob looked at the boy with concern as he put his hands on his shoulder. Okay. I think I have someone you'd like to meet. Naruto stared at the confused man as he was led behind the building. Naruto saw a long road go by that went into the forests and mountains. He looked at the disguised master. A friend of mine lives right in this pass. He lives in the mountains around the snowy area. Tomorrow I'll show you the way and then I can help you. He was about to lead the boy back inside before the young man ran up the path and into the trees. Wait. It's almost dark. It's too dangerous alone. Naruto turned around and yelled at the former fairy tale member. Okay Bob-san, I can take care of myself. See you soon. The boy accelerated towards the snowy mountain range. Bob raised his hand to signal the boy to go back, but he was already too far away. Sigh my god, that boy is so impulsive. It's like Maki-chan and Rob-chan in the old days. I hope you're fine. Naruto waded through the snow as his boots creaked in the white chill. His path had been covered in frost and he could not see a clear path. Everything she could see was illuminated by moonlight and stars. Night had fallen faster than she'd expected when strange noises and calls were heard through the bushes and trees. Naruto smelled the pines and snow around him, and though he wasn't sure, he thought he was being followed. He wasn't a wizard because they didn't follow him from behind. He wasn't even a person from the noise of the constant crunching of the snow. Naruto kept going until he got tired and faced the moving bush. Whatever's in there, show yourself. I'm sick of you following me around like a cowardly coward. Get out now. He turned as the sight of his billowing cloak and wrapped swords were intensified by the moonlight. He waited a few moments with great anticipation as finally he received no answer. Then a low, loud rumble filled his ears as he heard branches snap and snow crunch. Naruto heard heavy breathing as a winged lizard monster with white scales emerged from the trees and bushes. The thing was big enough, bigger than him but smaller than Kurama. At least one medium-sized creature with sharp claws and fangs. Did he look young for his size and race? Whatever. The creature stared at the boy, its black eyes made more menacing by the reflection of the moonlight. Naruto waited a few moments until his hands slowly slipped out of his cloak. He continued to stare at the monster as Excalibur and Kusanagi began to take shape in his hands. They continued to look at each other while neither the boy nor the creature made any movement. Suddenly, the lizard pounced on the boy, its teeth chattering as its mouth was wide open. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he rolled sideways, dodging the beast's bite. He landed on the ground and saw that the creature had taken a bite out of the tree in front of him. The lizard stepped back and looked at the boy who had dodged it. Naruto placed the swords in front of him in an X formation. He set up some armor and charged forward, swinging his sword at the monster's wings. The creature ducked and dodged his blow, listening to the spray of air above them. Naruto continued to swing his swords like a skilled amateur as the creature moved rapidly from side to side. Naruto made a weak blow as he parried it in mid-arc and unloaded his Excalibur at the creature. He took the brunt of the weak attack with his scales as the boy tried to break through the hard body. Naruto gritted his teeth when there was nothing left in his cut. He brought Kusanagi on him to continue the attack, but the lizard swung its pointed tail and broke the tip of Excalibur. Naruto made a disgusted noise as he jumped back to avoid the second tail swipe. He held the knight's broken sword and gripped the Japanese sword tighter. The nervous mustached boy felt his heart pounding as this fight continued. He had almost no personal combat experience that hadn't changed from Kurama and was a dabbler in hand-to-hand and swordsmanship. The only combat he'd ever fought had been with lackey wizards and weak jailers. The lizard banged its tail against the snow as steam escaped. He leveled himself off and looked at the slightly panting boy. He opened his mouth and felt a sort of magic pool at the back of her throat. Naruto watched in amazement as the white energy began to crackle and spark. His eyes widened in fear as he realized he was about to be hit. The lizard hurled a bolt of lightning that headed straight for the dazed boy. Naruto instinctively raised his Excalibur to protect himself, but the force of the attack destroyed the rest of the broken steel. The blade shattered as part of the attack struck Naruto in the shoulder, rolling him backward. He calmed down and watched the lizard as her attack faded. Naruto rushed forward with all his might and sent more armor into his arms and legs, increasing his strength. He threw Excalibur's hilt at the creature to get his attention as he grabbed Kusanagi with both hands. The lizard leapt sideways to avoid the useless hilt, but was right in the path of the boy's next attack. He leaned back to avoid most of the blow, but Naruto raised his sword and moved through the creature's scales, drawing some blood from the scratch. The creature let out a soft growl as it dodged further attacks. Naruto's blade made weak but rapid contact with the scales, his strengthened movements causing scratches to appear all over his body. As the creature moved aside, Naruto made a quick cut at the first layer of the monster's wing. The creature looked at the small scar appearing on his wing. He growled in anger as he stared at the mustachioed boy. Naruto raised the blade in front of him and complied with the heated gaze he was giving him. The creature flapped its wings and gained the height advantage, blocking the light from Naruto's eyes as she flailed her claws at the boy. Naruto used his magic to bear the brunt of the attack, but fell to his side. He moaned in pain as he looked back to see the lizard preparing its second attack. He leapt to his feet and raised the blade, parrying the attacks with his claws as they forced him back. He took several steps back as the creature continued its forward charge. Naruto felt his back land on a tree and felt another attack preparing for his head. As the reptile thrust its claw forward, Naruto added all the strength he could and thrust the blade forward. Kusanagi pierced the creature's leg and continued to the base of the leg. As Naruto moved the blade, the lizard roared in pain. WWWRRRRRAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA gasped below. She bit back another roar of pain as she limped gently on her pierced leg. Naruto backed away from the tree and aimed his blade at the creature. Stupid move to attack me, bastard. Now get out of here before I make you wish you never met me. The lizard raised its head and half of her face was obscured by the moonlight. She continued to stare at the human until he opened his mouth and gathered more magic inside. Naruto readied himself to dodge or receive the next attack by any means. The lizard opened its mouth and shot the beam straight to the ground, evaporating the snow and kicking up a cloud of dust and steam. Naruto's eyes widen in surprise at the cunning strategy the monster has played on him. He lifted the sheet and waited for any sign he could see on the deck. Course? Was it a cloud that covered him to keep him safe? Whatever it was, Naruto had decided to take this opportunity to get out of here and run. Just as Naruto turned around, he was greeted by the sight of the lizard creature advancing with its mouth open. Naruto panicked and raised his kusanagi to intercept the beast, but the monster's jaw ripped through the blade and pinned his shoulder and left arm. Ah! Naruto let out a bloody death cry as the painful creature dug its long fangs into his arm. He continued to scream as he felt the creature's teeth pierce his muscles and veins. He felt the intense pain increase to its maximum as the creature's teeth reached bone and dug their way into the marrow. Oh. Naruto clawed at the creature's face in a futile attempt to fight back as he tossed his head from side to side, partially ripping the skin on his shoulder and giving a partial view of the bone socket. Naruto tried to do everything but he couldn't concentrate, the pain was too intense to concentrate on the magic. The creature increased the strength of its jaw as more pressure concentrated on the bone, which had already punctured the auxiliary artery. Blood gushed as it covered Naruto's lower left cheek and the creature's raging teeth. Naruto continued to scream and cry in pain as his body shook and tried to do whatever it could. His hand kept shaking on the ground until finally he grabbed something. Naruto felt the partial Excalibur blade he had earlier thrown into his hand. He held the broken sword in his hand as he began to smack into the monster's teeth, trying to loosen his grip on it. He punctured the gums and drew more blood as the creature gave a gasp of pain. In retaliation, he bit again, completely breaking his arm as his teeth dug into and separated bones and joints in a grotesque mess in his mouth. His arm was now bleeding and bent in different directions along the full length of the limb. Naruto felt even worse pain go through him as he felt weak and helpless from the loss of blood. He continued to cling desperately to the broken Excalibur. He watched half-consciously as the creature dug deeper into his arm. Until Naruto finally saw a way to fight back. He raised the cut sheet and put it in the eye socket of the lizard. Levy continued to braid her friend's scarlet hair as they both sat in their pajamas in the armored girl's room. She hummed a silent tune as Erza smiled at the strange feeling of doing something so feminine. When Levy finished threading the last braid, he smiled with delight. Finished. The scarlet girl widened her different eyes as she pulled up the small braid of her still growing hair. She looked at herself in a mirror Levy had provided and smiled at her appearance. So what do you think? I love it, Levy. I think you did a great job. The new wizard laughed at the praise she received from the older girl. Erza continued to admire the way she looked in the mirror. I think I should keep it that way. Maybe I should grow my hair out, how about that? I think that would suit you, Erza. The two girls laughed as they continued to talk to each other. Hey Erza, why did you join the guild? Erza widened her eyes and looked thoughtfully at the sky, looking at the full moon. I heard a lot about it from an old friend of mine. She used to tell me so many stories about the wonderful times she had here and I wanted to see if she could have something like that. She looked at the blue-haired girl who was staring at her with wide eyes, and so far, I think I can understand why it is so wonderful. Levy nodded as he returned Elsa's smile. He fiddled with some of the things he had brought from her room to the other girls. Erza stood there in momentary silence until she decided to ask. Why did you join Levy? Levy shuddered as she remembered the events in his old city. My father died when I was very young, before I could remember. And my mother always took care of me. But she was always so sick, she needed to be home all the time. She clutched at the fabric of her pajama bottoms as she found it hard to say the rest. And one day, she died and I couldn't do anything to help her. I was supposed to stay in town at the orphanage until another family member could take me in. But Erza, she shifted on the bed and turned to look, seeing that Levy was holding back sobs and trying not to cry. He turned around and squeezed the girl in a hug. Levy took the opportunity to let out a few sobs on his chest. Those horrible men with flaming fists just attacked our city, killing so many people. They said the city harbored illegal fugitives and they had to deal with them themselves. Only a few people and they almost destroyed the city. Most of us walked out but didn't know where to go. And I've heard of this guild and wanted to be safe and get away from them. She let out a few more sobs as Erza's eyes softened in understanding of hers. I wanted to have another family. Erza stroked the shorter girl's back to calm her down, hoping to help her through this. She had heard in the newspapers and whispers from older guild members about that horrible guild. He talked about saving the country and its people, but it was just a terrorist group who thought they were doing the right thing. It was obvious that anyone attacking a single independent guild group would incur the wrath of the entire battle force. And they would have hunted down the guild that started the fight and eliminated it. It was suicidal trying to fight those men. Erza thought about how her friends would react to something like this. People who killed others just to make themselves understood and improve their image were no different from jailers. He held on to the crying girl and thought what his old friends with blue hair and mustaches would do against men like that. It's okay, Levy. We're here for you anytime. Levy looked up from his seat and met the kind blue and brown eyes of the normally armed girl. We're your family, and we will always protect you, so don't ever forget that, it's okay. Levy gave a faint smile as he nodded and continued to hug his new friend. Erza wondered if they would be safe if those monsters came knocking on her door. Fairy Tale was well known for causing trouble and spreading bad news. She just silently listened to her friend's sobs as her eyes widened with new determination. If she ever saw them, she would make them pay. XXX. Wra. The lizard let out an excruciating roar, choked in pain as she continued to bite down on the disfigured limb. Just as her blood spurted from her pierced eyeball and down the side of her face. Naruto kept turning and thrusting the blade further into the bloodied eye. He kept his teeth clenched as blood began to pour out of his mouth from the pressure and pain. What do you say, bastard? Do you like it? Take some more. He took out the blade and thrust it again. Blood splattered his right hand. The reptile kept making more gasps as he held his arm. The boy made no attempt to stop stabbing him. The creature then began to tug at the limb as the boy reattached the hilt to his broken cornea. Sigh, it was too much. She heard an uncomfortable growl behind him. His charged blonde had been unconscious for nearly a day, recovering from the horrific wound and subsequent regeneration. Naruto let out a painful grunt as he tried to move, his body aching from the physical exchange earlier. He slowly opened his eyes to look at the roof of an unfamiliar building. It looked like a building with a wooden clapboard roof. He was in a bed next to a wall in a small cabin. Naruto tried to stand up, but felt the ghostly pain in his left arm hit him for a moment longer. He noticed that the smallest of his wounds had been repaired and healed, but he couldn't see what had happened to the left side of him. As he was about to watch, a voice became familiar. You know, I could only assume you were making a rash move to come here alone. Bobby probably tried to stop you, but you probably ran away in a hurry. Naruto looked to his right with bleary eyes as the figure's back to the boy continued to stir a pot of food. Naruto could see his swords and journal lying around the man's side and thought he had removed them. He tried to get up and leaned over on his side, but found it was useless. But I have to say it's captivating to see you get this far. Naruto looked at the old man's back as he finished fidgeting. A metal gauntlet hand landed on the book and patted it down. That little boy who was so eager to get out has been brought here. And on his own mission, no doubt. The man turned and looked at the boy. Naruto's eyes widened in shock at the sight in front of him. His superior hair was shaved, but he still had the long beard that Naruto launched to attract his attention. The right side of the face and his neck had still burned scars, but they had healed a little. He was wearing a thick jacket as he sat down in front of the pot on the fire. And his eyes still had that look of pride along with that smile that helped him when he was in pain. Naruto felt tears well up in his eyes. Rob G-chan.
It's so good to see you again, Naruto-kun. The man said as tears also formed on the sides of his eyes. Naruto tried to stand up but winced as a little pain shot through him once again. Rob saw this and pulled up a chair, carrying it to the side of the bed. Ah, don't stress, Naruto-kun. Your body has yet to get used to the metal prosthesis.
Prosthesis of what? Naruto asked his grandfather when he heard a strange clanking noise to his left. He bent down and saw something attached to his left shoulder. He raised his arm and saw what had happened. What had replaced his left limb was now a strange metal glove. It was a silver arm on which layered dots jumped. At the tip of his hand were fingers that moved with his thought. He flexed his fingers and noticed his arm following his command. He followed the carcass and saw that it was attached where a nasty fresh cut was evident around the socket joint. He looked at the arm in amazement and horror. What is this? That's a metal reform prosthetic shell. It was used a lot during the war for wounds and amputations. It's actually quite useful. He raised his right arm to show the boy his face. Naruto looked up to see that where his burned and severed arm was followed by an exact replica of his left arm. The man picked it up and started making punches and shapes. What are you doing? Hey, well, it was meant to be used during combat when soldiers were wounded or poisoned. The wrap was supposed to act as an extremely powerful sealing tool to prevent poison or ailments from reaching the rest of the body. And it has been used to help amputees integrate into society more easily with a functional prosthesis. He reached over and helped Naruto prop himself up against a pillow on his head. It feeds on the magical impulses that the body sends through the body and functions as a normal limb. So even if the body part is no longer usable or, he raised his right hand once more, destroyed, you can use again. I collected a lot of this metal after the end of the Cabria War. I figured it might come in handy if I was ever in too much pain, so I kept a few in all my homes. Apparently I was lucky. Naruto lifted his aching arm again and observed the strange sensation. What happened to mine? Rob stopped laughing as he got up and grabbed a bowl. He poured him some hot soup and took her to bed. He took out the spoon and blew on it to cool it. He brought it to the boy's mouth, gesturing for him to take a sip. Naruto leaned forward and took the tip of the spoon into his mouth. The broth spilled into his mouth, burning his tongue slightly.
He swallowed the soup and realized it was one of the best things he had ever eaten. Rob continued to feed him as he watched the boy greedily eat his food. When I heard the roar from the forest, I thought a wyvern had flown from the mountain and attacked someone. As I ran, I noticed a young wyvern flying from the forests as if injured. And when I got close to where the fight was going on, I found you were missing an arm. Naruto looked at the man where he was being fed from and remembered what had happened. The awful burning sensation and the thing sticking out of his side. A strange red bubble started forming around the open wound and I didn't know what was going on. But soon you started screaming and grabbing it as a new arm started growing where the old one was. Then it started to change.
What do you mean by change? As if what was being done was not humane. It was a claw, like a fox's arm but mixed with a human's. In fact, it looked like it had hair and was tearing up the ground underneath you. And it didn't seem like you were doing much better. It seemed that if I left you there you would turn into a monster. So I ran away and knocked you down. Naruto finished sipping the contents of the bowl as Rob set it aside. I thought you were going to get caught in that arm, so I thought fast. I covered your arm with the wrap, hoping for the best. I knew that magic will not stop you and I didn't even know if it would work. Luckily for me, reformatting cut out all the power, not just the magic. Naruto nodded at his explanation, even though he basically went in one ear and out the other. He closed his eyes and quickly jumped into his mindscape to see what had happened. As he did so, the boy noticed a strange shield that covered everything in front of his left shoulder and prevented him from seeing to the other side. Like a huge wall built around a child's arm. Naruto looked at the metal. So when can I take it off? Rob coughed uneasily at his question. Well, you can't. Essentially, the metal almost forms a second layer of skin and takes the place of the affected limb. It is extremely difficult to remove. However, in your case that would be a bad idea. That energy has been cut off but is still stored in the arm box. If it finds a way to take it away, it will hoard it and take it back. And this time I won't be there to stop you. So you mean, never take it off? Naruto nodded nervously at the simplified explanation. He felt an awkward silence fill the cabin as they both fell silent, the flickering of the fire the only sound they heard. Until Naruto got under the covers. Rob looked at his young friend. I'm so glad you're okay. Rob saw that Naruto's eyes were a little teary as he smiled and wrapped his arms around the boy. Naruto felt the nostalgic feeling of being safe in the man's arms. They both laughed for a while. What happened after we separated? Naruto shuddered at all the events that had unfolded after he left the burned man on the boat. Naruto started explaining everything that happened to him after that. Jalal's meeting and betrayal. Losing Erza and falling into the tower catacombs. And how he woke up and lived on the island. And how he had found the cemetery. Rob nodded and listened to everything he said. After he finished, they were momentarily silent. And you? Rob rolled his eyes and looked at Naruto as he stared back. I thought you died when your ship exploded. How are you still alive? Rob chuckled as he looked at his young protege. I got some help. I escaped from the deck of the ship while many more ointments were preparing the ship for the journey. The senior slave in charge grumbled as he looked at the wounded and scorched man. Oh, hell with that. I didn't deal with a burning corpse. He reached out and brutally grabbed the ex-fairy tale wizard's burned arm, earning a gasp of intense pain from the poor man. He dragged the body to the edge and prepared to throw it into the sea. But just as he was about to do so, a pair of small hands grabbed the man's arm and held his pitch. The older man looked down and met the heated gaze of an almond-eyed red-haired boy with what looked like a small snake on his shoulder. "What are you doing?" the boy asked in his small voice as he grabbed the burned man's arm and lifted it up. "You heard that, hoodlum, you can't just throw him overboard like that. That guy is practically dead already. And the ship would stink if we left him here." Many other big men followed, as they all had a fearful expression on their faces. "We're kicking him out." The man ducked down but was intercepted by a low wall. Ahead of the boy and the burned man were several other children, blocking their way. A fat boy with orange hair. A little boy with yellow, pointed eyebrows and a shaved head. A black-haired boy with bags under his eyes. And finally a girl with white hair and a feather resting on her ear. Eric stared at him as he gripped the old man's arm. "We won't let you kill this man. You'd be no better than those cursed jailers if you did that. So fuck you." The man's anger peaked when he started reaching for the boy, but the boy's wall had intercepted him. All the boys held the bulky thralls while Eric carried the man on deck. They reached a small lifeboat and Eric gently lowered the man onto the benches. "Here, Osan, you should be safe here. I can't guarantee you'll find dry land, but it's better than being thrown off the side of a boat." He readied the boat to leave as the older men had captured the other children and started putting them in a lifeboat on the other side to throw them off. Rob stood up a little and looked at the crimson-haired boy. "Why are you helping me?" The boy interrupted his preparations as he looked at the old man. He smiled at her as the snake wagged its tail. "Because I can't let that weird mongrel cat be the only hero." She waved the man away as he began to lower the boat. Rob felt the last few meters fall faster as the boy was picked up and thrown into the rowboat with the others. Rob felt his boat being carried away by the waves as he lay there, feeling the current carry him away. He then heard another explosion and saw that the ship had blown up. He realized that being paralyzed had just saved his life. But he could only regret the feeling of abandoning his friends and those little children. While she silently floats in the water. "I sailed for a few days until they found me near a beach in an ancient city. The closest guild was Lamiascale, so I asked a young man named Jura for help and set off. Blue Pegasus was only a week away, so I headed there. I got help from my old friend Bobby and I walked here. And for now I've decided to stay here." Naruto nodded as his eyes dropped sadly. He'd been so worried about Rob that he thought he was dead. What did he know? Old men like him never gave up. He continued this train of thought until Rob intervened. "What are you going to do now, Naruto-kun?" Naruto looked up and then down at his hands, which were on his lap. "Well, I guess I'll leave and go back to Fairy Tale. That's where I wanted to go in the first place. And when I'm there, I'll go find Jelal and all again. It should be easy enough. This was just a setback." Rob grunted in agreement as he took the bowl and returned to the stew. What if that's not the case? "That. I said, what if it isn't?" Rob turned and looked at the boy. "What if you lose because you were weak?" I'm not weak. I've fought hundreds of ninjas, and I beat all those jailers in the tower." "Yes, but you defeated those ninjas with the help of Kurama's power. And those jailers would have lost against a strong gust of wind. These are not results to be proud of." Naruto got angry at what his friend was insinuating. "What do you mean?" The man stood up and surpassed Naruto with his height. "I'm saying you won't be as lucky as you were today. That was just a wyvern boy. An adult can fight several skilled wizards alone. And there are wizards out there who would kill a boy like you just for his boots. Maybe even less than that." Naruto continued to stare until his eyes weakened and he nervously gripped the sheets of the bed. Rob softened his gaze as he knelt and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I don't want to see you hurt anymore. You have a lot to give to this world, Naruto-kun. And I know people would cringe at the thought of losing you." Naruto looked at him. "I know I would. So what do I do?" Rob smiled as he stood up and patted his meaty hand against his chest. "You are lucky to be in the same house as one of the most experienced wizards in fairy tale history. I can fight multiple wizards and monsters on my own. And," he looked at Naruto, who was only looking at him, "I might want to teach you that strength." "Really, Rob G-chan?" "Yes, and you are lucky. That new arm of yours can probably be used as a fortress." "Hey. What do you mean?" "I mean, when I stopped the flow in your arm, I still left a lot of power there. So if you use it right," he winked at the boy and gave his thumb up, "that power can become your triumph. Paper. Winning card." Naruto looked down at his hands as he still couldn't figure out what he meant. "What do you mean by that?" As she did, she let her arms swing helplessly. And when his left arm made contact with the cabin wall, a chunk of the wall exploded, vaporizing snow and wood. A loud crash and a cloud of dust rose from where the impact had destroyed part of the cabin wall. As the cloud of dust lifted, he left behind an image of Naruto and Rob looking down the hole. Their eyes darkened by their hair as they both kept faces of stone. Naruto began to shiver as he sweated profusely. Hey, Rob G-chan, I look. Naruto turned and looked at his older father. Sweat ran down his face as he tried to completely ignore the damage he'd caused. I blew up a wall with one punch. Isn't that fantastic? Yes, it really is, Naruto-kun. Rob's face betrayed no emotion as he looked at the boy with a smile. And he'll look even better after the training we'll start after you fix this wall. Damn it, to be continued.
It for this part, guys. Thanks for listening to this video, and if you did enjoy this part of the story, like, share and subscribe, and thank you all for your help and support, and have a great day.